Hey, what's up? It's Justin with NRN, and welcome to this week's Pit Stop, your pit stop for all your racing news. The Clash just finished up, and we have our first winner of the Speed Weeks. It's Brad Keselowski in that number 2 Ford Miller Lite for Penske Racing. Fords are looking very strong right now in the early runnings. It was 1, 2, 3 for the Penskes, all three of the Penske cars running at the top, and I was thinking over the offseason actually that Fords were going to struggle. And boy, am I wrong. I'm eating my words right now because I just didn't think they were going to do all that good because they haven't really changed a whole lot with their package. I mean, so I didn't think they were going to do all that well. But with the change of the rules and the new aero package, the Fords seem to be taking to it the best right now. So Brad Keselowski wins the Clash. Jimmy Johnson fails to finish for a 7th year in a row. And Fords are strong. And then in qualifying, it was a double header down in Daytona. Qualifying, Alex Bowman would take the pole in his first attempt. He's got some big shoes to fill stepping in for Dale Earnhardt Jr. in that number 88, but so far he's on the way to filling those shoes, and he's going to be starting from the pole on the Daytona 500, and Denny Hamlin is going to be to his outside, which, by the way, Denny Hamlin right now is probably one of the best restrictor plate drivers in NASCAR. Because with everyone else retiring and leaving and Junior gone, that leaves Denny Hamlin, and he is great at this restrictor plate racing. So he's probably the best in the business. He's starting second. So the front row is locked for the Daytona 500. It's going to be Alex Bowman and Denny Hamlin. And of course, now the rest of the field will have to race on Thursday night in the duels to determine where they will start for the 60th running of the Daytona 500. And I'm glad that it's at night because in years past it's always been in the middle of the day, and who can watch racing on a Thursday afternoon? I was either at work or at school, but this year it's at night. So good job, NASCAR. Way to look up. I don't know why you haven't done this before. I don't know why you didn't do this in years past. I guess because it only made sense. But yeah, so that's good to see that it's at Thursday night, so now we can actually watch the race, find out who's going to be starting where. But all the entries are going to make it. There are only 40 spots available in the 500, but only 40 cars showed up. So everyone's going to make the race and no one's going home. And I saw an interesting stat on top of that this is kind of odd, that this will be the first Daytona 500 since 1982 that no beer sponsors will be on the cars. It will be a sober Daytona 500 because none of the cars out on the track will be sponsored by a beer company. There will still be beer cars in NASCAR. There just won't be in for that race because Busch is still staying as a partner with Kevin Harvick, and Brad Keselowski is still staying with Miller Lite. In fact, he was in the Miller Lite car for the Clash, but I guess Miller Lite isn't going to sponsor the car in the 500, but they sponsored the car in the Clash, which he won. So he was drinking Miller Lite in Victory Lane with the rest of the Light crew. It was Miller time. But it was a fun Clash. Looks like the takeaway that I had from watching it was that handling is going to play a pivotal role in the race because those cars were handling so poorly. They were slipping and sliding everywhere. Everybody was getting into one another. And you could see their hands in the cockpits really working on the wheel, sawing at that wheel, trying to keep that car going straight. So my big takeaway is handling is going to be very important. Now, the new aero package increases the speed. They were flying out there. Heading down the backstretch going into turn 3, they were going 201 miles per hour and then doing 197 to 196 in the corner. Is that crazy or what? I mean, them guys are flying out there with cars that they can barely control. I cannot imagine what it must be like going that fast with cars on either side of you stuck in the middle, and you're having to sit in there and fight that car with everything you've got to keep it going straight. Oh my gosh. But they look like they had a good time. The drivers got out of there. They were all happy. They look like they had fun. I just think it's going to make for a very interesting 500. I think it's going to be a good one. I think the new aero package really works. They've lowered that back end. That back end looks like it's dragging the track. It is so low to the ground now. And they shortened up the splitter a bit. I mean, the spoiler, excuse me. They shortened that up a bit. That's what's causing the speed. It's giving them more horsepower. And you know, physics, if you add horsepower to the car, it only gets harder. The faster you go, it gets harder to drive. And that's what's happening right now. So he who can get the best handling is going to do well in the race. Also, This was the first race that we got to see some pit stops under the new rule change, and it looked like Kurt Busch had the best time. He did a 4-tire change, and they were the quickest. Of course, Brad Keselowski came in, only took 2 tires, and he got the lead of the race. But a 4-tire change looks like the fastest time would go to Kurt Busch. But it did seem a bit awkward for a lot of the guys under the new change, and the stops were slower than we're used to seeing, and that's only natural, but that is only going to get quicker and quicker as teams come up with systems. But, you know, like I said in the recap, you can practice for pit stops as much as you want. You know, you can sit there and you can go throughout the entire offseason and say, we're going to practice pit stops every single day. Every single day we're going to run drills. But there's nothing quite like that race competition stop. And that's what for the 17 drivers that were involved in this race, that's what they got. They got an advantage. They got to have that first stop under competition and kind of get ahead of the rest of the field. They can now go back and debrief, say what worked, what didn't work, and let's go from there. And that just gives them an advantage. And with it being as difficult to pass as it is now in NASCAR, if you can gain some spots on pit road with a good stop, that could be the difference between winning and losing. And in the same respect, they also got an advantage with the handling of the cars. Going back to the handling issue, which it seems like all anybody was talking about. That was the big story after the race, how poorly the cars handled. But now those teams can go back, debrief, and go, gosh, this is what the car felt like. This is what it was driving like in a pack. Here's what we got to do to fix it. Here's what we got to do to make it better. Let's make it better. So those 17 guys, when you get to the duels, they've already got one up on the rest of the field. They've already been in a race setting with that package. So it was a fun race to watch, man. And if it's anything like we're going to see for the Daytona 500, I think it's going to be a good 500. But I'm still pretty surprised at the dominance of the Fords right now. They just seem to take to this new package a lot better than the Toyotas or the Chevys right now. The Chevys seem to be quick by themselves because they were doing pretty well in qualifying, actually. By themselves, they seem to be really fast. It just, for some reason, when the race begins and they're in that pack and they're drafting and they're racing, the cars don't seem to do as well. And the Fords aren't that fast by themselves, but when they get to racing, man, them things hook up together. The first 4 finishers in the race were all Fords. It was Brad Keselowski first, Joey Logano second, Kurt Busch would be third, and Ryan Blaney fourth. All Fords. But this is crazy and something I really have to see to believe. You know, seeing is believing. And this is something that I take the guy's word for it, but I really want to see it to believe it. But James Allison of Mercedes has made the claim that the new halo that will appear on the F1 cars for the 2018 season can hold up a London double-decker bus. Can you believe it? That ugly halo thing that they're putting on the car this year can hold up a double-decker bus. The new titanium structure designed to protect the driver's head can withstand the pressure of 12 tons. And that kind of strength should certainly stop anything coming at the driver's head. If it can hold up a London double-decker bus, it should be able to stop just about anything. So it looks like it's going to do its job. Protect the driver's head. It just looks terrible. And he did go on to say that the halo is terrible aerodynamically. But you can tell by looking at the thing, it doesn't look aerodynamic whatsoever. And I just still think it should be a canopy. I've said all along when they first announced it, I was like, yeah, it should be a canopy. It'll be aerodynamic that way, and it'll look cool. Yeah, I mean, it will certainly do away with the tradition of having the driver's head exposed, because now they'll be in a canopy. But it'll look cool, like a little fighter jet without wings and wheels instead. It'll look fast. But more changes are coming to Formula One with the absence of the grid girls. There will be no grid girls going forward. And Niki Lauda was really fired up about that. He hasn't been that fired up about something since he was literally on fire. That's a bad joke. Going straight to hell for that. But he says this move is bad for women because it excludes them from the event. And others say it's good for women because they really didn't serve any other purpose having them out there other than they were pretty and to stand next to some cars. So I really don't know how you feel about the whole thing. It is a tradition. Traditionally, there have always been grid girls. These really hot supermodels coming out, standing next to the cars and applauding the race winner as he walks by. But I really don't have a whole opinion on the thing. I'd love to know what you think, though. Are you pissed that the grid girls are going away? Are you going to be upset when you look at pit road this year and you don't see a hot supermodel standing next to your favorite car? Honestly, I never watched it for the grid girls. I could care less, honestly. I watch racing for the racing, not the grid girls. I never really paid a whole lot of attention to them. And neither did the drivers. It was actually kind of awkward to watch. They'd be sitting there, you'd have these really hot chicks clapping for this driver, and he's just walking past them like, whatever. He ain't paying them no mind. But Nikki Lauda thinks the grid girls should stay. But I'd love to know what you think. Drop a comment below. What do you think? I'd love to know. This week, the World Endurance Championship held its first press conference for the new Super Season. An endurance race within the season itself. An endurance race within an endurance race within an endurance race season. What a paradox. A 2-year-long campaign for the championship, including 2 rounds at Le Mans. And normally the top LMP1 class hasn't been all that exciting. Like last year, it was just Toyota and Porsche won most of the races. I mean, that was your top class, was just like, it's Toyota and Porsche. But this year, things are going to be different. There will be 10 cars in the LMP1 field. And one of those will be driven by 2-time Formula One world champion Fernando Alonso, who is going to compete for that Triple Crown. To win the Triple Crown, you've got to have Le Mans, you've got to have Monaco, and you've got to have the Indy 500. And Alonso has already won Monaco twice. Now he's just got to win Le Mans and Indy, and he's golden. Graham Hill is currently the only driver in history of the world to ever win the 3 events. But Alonso is looking like he wants to try to join that small list of drivers. And he might be able to do it. And if he does it, that could be something we never see for a very long time. We could be watching history in the making here. But Fernando will join with the powerhouse of Toyota for the Super Season. Competing against them are teams from Switzerland, Austria, China, Russia, and the good old US of A. Dragon Speed will be the American team and will feature Ranger van der Zande as one of the drivers. He was the guy who got the pole for the 24 Hours of Daytona this year for Wayne Taylor Racing. And Rebellion is jumping from the LMP2 field to the top class with their new Orica R13. And there will be 5 different engine suppliers featured in the LMP1 class this year, which include Toyota, Gibson, Nismo, Macron, and AER. They will be the engine suppliers on the grid for the Super Season in the top class LMP1. I think it'll be fun having 10 cars out there now. It'll certainly be a lot more exciting than watching Toyota and Porsche go back and forth with one another. But in my favorite class, the GTE cars, BMW is actually joining the ranks with the new M8. They're going to take their BMW M8 and they're going to go race it against the rest of the field and see how they do. Aston Martin will race their new Vantage AMR as well. But there will be familiar faces on the grid, including Ferrari, who is returning with the 488. The 2017 world champions James Calado and Alessandro Pierguidi will return to pilot that car, and the Chip Ganassi Ford GTs will return along with Porsche, who are hoping for a much better season than they had last year with the new generation 911 RSR. Beautiful car and very loud, by the way. I could not believe how loud that 911 Porsche is until I heard it during the Rolex, and I was like, damn, that car is loud. In LMP2, it will be smaller than it was last year with 7 entries, but only 3 different constructors this year. That will be the Orica 07, the Dallara P217, and the Ligier JSP 217. Those will be the 3 constructors in that team. The French teams of Signatech, Alpine, and TDS will be back racing along with Jackie Chan DC. 2 new entries to the class will be Dragon Speed, who also have an LMP1 car, and Racing Team Netherlands. And last year, that LMP2 class was very big, but a lot of those teams are moving up to the top class, so that's why that class got smaller. And in the last class, GTE AM, 3 brands will be featured amongst the 9 entries in the field. They will be Aston Martin, Ferrari, and Porsche. And that is going to be the field for the Super Season. And we won't know who will be the champions in all of these classes until the close of 2019. We're going to watch these guys race for 2 years to determine who's going to win a championship. That is something else. I'm looking forward to it. I really am. I think the super season idea is pretty neat. You know, it's like taking an endurance race and turning the entire season into an endurance race. Who can make it the 2 years? Who's going to commit to the 2 years? Who can stand at the top of the podium at the end of 2 years? For the first race of the super season will be on April the 5th. So got a while before we can watch some racing there. And Le Mans is actually going to be featured twice in this season. That's cool. That's real cool. We're going to have to score points at Le Mans twice to win this championship. So whoever wins the championship in this one. Man, but you know, is the World Endurance Championship, are they going to do this going forward, you think? Like, is this going to be the new norm for them? Like, we only decide our championship every other year? Or are they just doing this? This is just a one-time thing that they'll do. I hope it's a one-time thing, actually, and whoever wins this will have that forever. Like, we're the team that won the only 2-year-long season. That would be cool. But that's going to do it for me on the pit stop. That concludes it for the week. That's your racing news. The duels are this Thursday, and then the Daytona 500 is this weekend, so NASCAR is back in town, and it is ready to go. We've had 3 months of quiet, and it is over, and it is time to go racing again, my friends. It is time to go racing again. I'm Justin with NRN, and I'll see you back here next week. Take it easy.